Welcome to the Small Business Big Marketing Show, where successful small business owners share their secrets to take your marketing to the next level. Now here's your host, Tim Reid.
G'day everyone, and welcome back to episode 100. Yep, you heard it right, 100 of Australia's favourite small business marketing podcast. I am your host, Timbo Reid. It is an absolute pleasure to have you along. We are here thanks to the very good folk at netregistry.com.au. And yeah, it is an exciting time. 100 shows. I'm quite proud of that. 80 with my mate Lukey. 20 have been done flying solo. And hello to all you flying soloists out there as well. Have been done flying solo just with me and some absolutely spectacular guests. So pretty proud of reaching the century, but I'm not going to make a big hoo-ha about it because this show is all about you, the motivated small business owner who wants to get on with doing great marketing in order to build your business. And that's what this show is all about. So thank you for those tweets and Facebook updates and emails that I have received on the pending 100th show. Keep them coming. I do love it. But yeah, this show is all about you. Today's guest, two things. Great guest today is James Tuckerman from Anthill Online, which I'll talk about in a minute. Secondly, got a great listener question from a retailer that's under the pump competitively. Who isn't? And a couple of other things to cover. First of all, let's maybe get stuck into this listener question because it's quite interesting. It comes from Kevin, and Kevin has a business called Luggage Direct. He says, Timbo built a very successful business over 20 years in an area dominated by wholesale outlets. A competitor is now opening up right next door, aggressive and focused on me as he is currently about 50 buildings away, but openly advertises he will beat any price of mine by 15%. That's quite a lot. He has been at this location for about 18 months and struggling, but in October, he will be next door to me. Sells the two big brands I have, Samsonite and Antler. How would I attack this to gain a competitive advantage? I trade solely from this location plus online. He has 12 stores located in 2 states. Regards, Kevin. Thanks for your question, Kevin. You know what? The very, very first thing that comes to mind here is don't get stuck into a discounting war. That would be just the big mistake, I reckon, to make because we know where discounting goes. It can only go one place, that's down, and someone is going to get hurt. So if you're not going to discount, then you are going to need to continue. And it sounds like you already are adding significant value, Kevin, because you've been in business for 20 years. But you're going to really need to demonstrate the value and answer the big why question. Why should people buy from you and not him or her? So my advice would be to focus on what you do really well and start to create more content. You may already be running, you don't tell me what marketing you're doing, but you know, if you're running advertising campaigns or direct marketing, well, maybe reassess those and start creating some more content around, you know, helping people with their travel tips, because I guess that's what luggage is all about at the end of the day, helping people with their travel tips. I'd suggest starting a blog, a video series, maybe even a podcast around travel tips, and promote that in all your literature in store and online, etc. And one of the other things I do is do a JV, a joint venture with, for example, one of the biggest, the local, not real estate agent, travel agents in the local area. I used to do this when I was at Flight Centre. We'd run fantastic information evenings and sometimes bring in other relevant retailers in the local area. But travel is an interesting thing and luggage is all part of the travel industry. So I can imagine doing a joint venture with the local Flight Centre or Harvey World Travel or whoever it is, put on information evenings, share each other's lists, and just add value that way. Continue to tell your own story. And that would be the kind of way I'd roll, Kev. As I said, don't discount. Do a bit more than what you're already doing. The competitive heat is going to increase. So I'd add a few more strings to your marketing bow, but they don't have to be expensive strings. As I said, like blogging or creating useful videos, maybe a weekly video update on developments in the luggage and travel industry that you could do a joint venture with that local travel agent to produce would be a really useful thing. So hopefully that was of use. Now, Kev and other listeners, if you do want to improve your online marketing, can I suggest, and I'm talking search engine optimization, pay-per-click advertising, website redevelopment, you name it, go to netregistry.com.au because they have got all the solutions to getting your business sorted online. And they're great friends of this show, as everyone knows, and I encourage you to go either to smallbusinessbigmarketing.com and click on the Net Registry banner or go to Net Registry Direct and they will get you sorted. Now, today's guest. Now, this is interesting. James Tuckerman is the founder of Anthill Magazine, and James is a guy who I have watched from a distance for the last few months, attended a couple of Anthill events. James is going to explain what Anthill was shortly. It's one of the first questions. Suffice to say that it used to be a magazine for entrepreneurs. Now it's a completely online portal for motivated business owners just like you. And but I'd been watching James from a distance for quite a number of months, and then went to one of his events about 3 weeks ago. Didn't get the opportunity to say hello to him or introduce myself. But then an email comes through from a mutual friend of ours who the next morning and introduces us. So how's that? What do you call that? Is that, I can never remember that word when, weird things happen but are meant to, but that's what happened. So James is a very interesting guy. He's a very motivated guy. He's an entrepreneur at heart. He started an incredibly successful brand in the Anthill brand, which he's going to talk about. Another brand that started from a second bedroom, like last week's guest, Kim Illman from Messages on Hold, also started a multi-million-dollar business from his spare bedroom. What is it about these spare bedrooms? Maybe there's a business in spare bedroom creation. Maybe they're a creative hot seat. I don't know. Back to James. Great guy. We cover a lot here. The Anthill story, magazine publishing, content creation, such a hot topic. And he's even got a couple of events coming up, which he talks about at the end of this interview, which I would encourage you to go to. Now, having met the boy, had a coffee with him last week, so I really got to know him, got to eyeball him. But he's a good guy, and I think you're going to really enjoy and benefit from this interview. Pen and paper at the ready, guys. Lots of notes to be taken. Here's James Tuckerman from Anthill Magazine. See ya. James Tuckerman, Anthill Online, welcome to Small Business Big Marketing.
Thank you, Tim.
Absolute pleasure to have you along. James, I notice you're sporting a fairly, what some would say short haircut, others would say bald. How long, mate?
I'm wearing, I call it the Seth Godin.
It is a bit of a Seth Godin.
That's right. Yeah, when I started this business, I had a full head of hair and a rock hard set of six-pack. But no.
Is it? Well, you could look, as a marketing guy, looking like Seth Godin is a good thing. And for listeners, if you don't know Seth Godin, Google him because he's kind of the doyen of marketing. What would you call him? The doyen of marketing speak?
Yeah, he's one smart dude. Permission Marketing was, I think, the first book he wrote in about 1999.
Yeah, it was.
Which no one even knew what it meant, and now we all know what. Permission marketing is everything that we do online.
I was a young bloke in advertising then, and I read that book, and it really opened up my mind. And as you say, it's actually one of those evergreen books. It's still relevant. It's just the kind of tools have changed. Enough of that. Enough of Seth. Let's talk James now, mate. You got a great story. You have got a great story. In order for it to make sense, can you just explain the Anthill brand? What is it all about?
Well, it was initially a print business magazine, but now it's a 100% digital product by way of background. But what it means, someone asked me the other day, they said, how would you describe your brand? And two words popped into my head, and they were edgy and experimental, which is funny for a business brand. You wouldn't expect something like a BRW to describe itself as either edgy or experimental.
So it's a brand that's for who?
It's for business owners, it's for entrepreneurs, it's for anyone who's growing an enterprise. The expressions we use: innovation, entrepreneurship, commercial creativity. Anyone that wants to, turn their passion into a commercial enterprise. But having said that, the readership ranges from, the one person at home, Soho, small office, home office owner, to people right at the top of publicly listed companies. People who are thinking about business, love business, but like to do things a little bit differently.
It's funny, when we have similar audiences. And by the way, thank you for putting Small Business Big Marketing on the homepage of Anthill. That is an absolute treat. I too have an audience where, on one hand, I've got a whole, I've got thousands of solopreneurs, Soho type people. Then there's got those 5 to 10 employee type companies, and then right up to, I know there's people listening that have 50 up to 100 staff. So it's kind of quite a broad range. You too.
It's fun, and it's always exciting when you're doing something, and then because we're a media company, and you look and you suddenly notice that there's these big names from somewhere like Fairfax or News Limited that are reading or listening or watching. It gives me a cheap thrill.
Well, what that says to me, I think you'll agree, is that us little guys and the small end of town, the small businesses, are so often leading the way in smart marketing. In being entrepreneurial, in getting stuff done.
Yeah, I think that's the expression, getting stuff done. We get stuff done, whatever it takes.
Yeah,
we might even get something done every day. Imagine that in a large organisation.
Well, unheard of. And hello to all you people in large organisations listening, but that's the reality. Hey, so interesting, your story. You launched in 2003 in your spare bedroom. My guest last week also launched in his spare bedroom, Kim Illman from Messages on Hold, who talked about ambush marketing. Also, he got sacked from Channel 9 and then started up a business, Messages on Hold, in his spare bedroom. What is it about this spare bedroom thing? Is it just a creative kind of space, is it?
Well, this was actually my sister's old bedroom in my parents' house, and I was only 26 years of age, so it's almost a decade ago now, I'm afraid to say. But begged mum and dad to let me move home so I could quit my corporate day job. I was a lawyer that had stumbled into PR, and then one day woke up and said, I'd like to launch a business magazine to rival BRW, something that's a little bit fun and interesting and exciting, because I knew that my clients were business owners, but they were all really young in mindset, irrespective of their age, whereas most business journalism, and we're going back a decade, was really dry. It was written for someone in my grandparents' generation. Whereas my grandparents had moved well out of business. I'm going to
still say, and I've talked a couple of times about BRW previously, but even some of the articles that I see around marketing, and I always look out for BRW's marketing articles. They're still sort of like, I don't know, they still feel a little bit dated, even when they come out these days. It's just, I don't know, maybe we live at more of a cutting edge. Don't know.
Well, I think that your listeners can empathise with me, but I believe that business can and should be fun, particularly if you're running your own thing.
Crazy concept?
Because if it's not fun, why the hell are you doing it?
Correct.
There's a lot of hardship involved with running your own business. So,
James, I absolutely agree with that. Now, I want to know what you did right here. You've started this thing called Anthill Magazine in 2003 from a spare bedroom. 1 year later, and for 2 years running, you're named Australia's best small publisher by Publishers Australia. That's quick. What did you do right?
Well, in the beginning, if you can imagine, I had no employees. I was running it from mum and dad's spare bedroom with the Wham posters on the wall and the love hearts on the curtains.
Wham!
My
Gee, I have trouble saying that I was a Spandau Ballet fan, but you've just come through with Wham. Thank you.
Yeah, what a shocker! And what we did is I personally put out a business magazine that was very polished and was really, really different to what had been out there. And quickly we got picked up by the airports, which is a real bonus when you do magazines. And then of course we're in Borders and we're in bookshops. Typical small business stuff, sitting at home, selling advertising during working hours, doing the bookkeeping and the subscriptions at night, on the weekends writing every single article, putting friends and family's names next to columns so they wouldn't think that I was the only writer. The Wolfgang, our dog, became our equities correspondent. And if you can imagine, the phone would ring and people would say, "Can I please speak to your subscriptions department?" And I would pick up the phone and say, "Certainly," and then put it down again and pick it up again and then say,
I love it.
"Subscriptions," like subscriptions in a slightly different voice or something. And we won.
So what you did was clearly you just focused on creating really good content that you wanted to see, that you felt was missing in the bigger publications, and that was it just your 100% focus? You weren't watching the bank account, you weren't watching anything else but just creating great content. Is that fair?
I was watching the bank account, I have to say, because print magazines are very expensive, and the first edition was to cost me $40,000, and I was going to make that in advertising, but I ended up only making about $15,000 in advertising, so I had a $25,000 shortfall, but I had $28,000 in savings, and then the next edition I think I got a $12,000 shortfall, but the gods of Visa sent me a credit card offer with a $15,000 credit card. So that was $3,000 working capital. And then the third edition broke even. So I was on my way. But the marketing side of things, I think the thing that really stood us apart is that every business has a purpose, and we all know what the purpose is. And in this, a business magazine is obviously to educate and inform business owners.
When you say, stop you there, when you say we all know what the purpose is, sweeping statement, what do you mean by that?
Well, when you start a business, the way I looked at it is I looked at my business and I said, I've got to get two things right. I've got to get the purpose right, and I've got to get the personality right. So the purpose, if I was to say something like a brilliant innovation of our generation, would be the iPod. But the iPod is nothing more than an MP3 player that you can put headphones in, and you can listen to MP3 files. So that is its purpose. It is actually a piece of hardware for listening to MP3 files. That's its purpose.
And podcasts.
And for most, and podcasts, which is very, very obvious. But what Apple did brilliantly is they added this second dimension, which was personality. So, you're looking at all these other brands that released basically MP3 players at exactly the same time.
They were just boxes.
And they were just boxes. Whereas Apple was an iPod. And it changed the game. So with our magazine, we went purpose. Okay, what does BRW do? It informs its target market, and it shares information. It also, presents the message of its advertisers, which is its large part of its revenue model. But it had a very clear personality, and it was a very serious personality. So for Anthill, what I did is I went, purpose will be clear. Let's educate business owners, but let's make the personality vastly different, and let's make it more fun, and I've used that word a few times, but that was the main difference. So the purpose and the personality, and as a result, the launch just went really well because people talked about it.
And you've identified something that I talk about in brand workshops that I run, and anyone who's heard my brand character spiel knows that personality is just, we live in a world of parity. There is no shortage of marketing guys. There's no shortage of accountants, of masseurs, of chiropractors. Any industry has in it a lot of practitioners. And one of the few ways of differentiating ourselves these days is brand. And a major part of brand is understanding that those 3 to 5 personality traits that differentiate your business from all the others in your category.
So true. True.
That's a good reinforcement, Mr. Tuckerman. So, mate, you're going along beautifully. In 2009, you abandoned the print model and you go 100% online for the massive investment of $900.
Yeah, it was a bit of a shock. The $900 thing was a bit of a secret for a while. But what we did was, so we'd run for 5 years and we were doing very well. And I won't run through the circulation numbers and the statistics, but we were making some other people in the print industry a little bit anxious. They were sitting up. They were paying attention.
Okay, so your numbers were big, and they were big enough to worry the big guys.
They were. And by April 2008, we were doing, things were firing. But by late 2008, the world had changed quite significantly. The GFC had hit, and we'd known that we had to focus. We knew that we had to redirect our attentions towards digital because we figured it was inevitable. But until that point, there was no sense of urgency. and it was just something. It was something that was off in the future, this whole thing. But by the end of 2008, we'd seen the market change. We'd seen people pull back on their advertising. People wanted advertising that was measurable. And so by mid-2009, we made the announcement that we were going 100% digital. The funny thing is I expected everyone to do it in 2009, but it's only really been about this last 12 months that people are really beginning to take it seriously. But for us...
Who are you talking about? Other publications?
Yeah, I mean, anything that you read about the woes that are facing Fairfax over the last, Fairfax newspapers over the couple weeks and all the other stuff. So the funny thing was we made this announcement that we were going 100% digital. We got slammed by the competitive media. They wrote headlines like Anthill Magazine bites the dust and Anthill Magazine latest victim of financial crisis. But what happened was that within about 6 months, much to our surprise, much to everyone's surprise, we were probably more surprised than anyone, but within about 6 months we were listed by Nielsen online ratings among the top 50 business and finance websites in the country, the number one being the Australian Stock Exchange, number two being CommSec, and we came in at number 45, just above the News Limited 9MSN joint venture that was launched at the time. And as you mentioned before, this was undertaken on a budget of $900, which we didn't tell anyone at the time. That was our big secret. But now we'll tell anyone.
You've gone from you clearly reduced your costs significantly. You have gone from a printed magazine to an online portal, if you like. Same content. How do you do that for $900?
Well, essentially, it's an interesting question. So in some respects, the business is the same. In others, it's vastly different. So the type of journalism had to change. The advertisers changed. The production model and schedules and deadlines all changed. What we essentially did, and we've got a saying at Anthill, we're not the first to use it, but it's ready, fire, aim. So, and a good friend of ours, Scott Hamsacker, who quoted someone else, once said to us, if you're not slightly embarrassed about your website when you launch, you're too late. So we launched a pretty basic website for $900, a WordPress blog, and we went about focusing on this idea of community. And it really took us probably about 6 to 12 months to figure out what we'd done right. But what we've found is that a lot of people talk about community when they talk about online, and they get the words mixed up. They say that they've built a community, but they've often built a platform, which is just a piece of hardware. So we had this $900 platform, and then on the top of it, we built the community.
Hardware or software?
Software, software.
So platform being a place to place your content.
Yeah, just a piece of technology, which was a WordPress blog. And then it's everything that you do with that create the community. And we distilled it basically down into four principles, which I think apply to any online business, actually any business, because every business is now an online business in some capacity, whether they're a florist or a blogger.
Well, whether they are, they should be. They should be. You can no longer turn your back to the fact that the online is, it's here to stay and growing, and you are who Google says you are, as we've said before on this show. So before, I'd love you to share those. Are you happy to share those four principles with us? Before you do, let's just talk about, so we've gone from printed publication, we're online now, you've got this platform. It's not that good, but it's there, and it can only be sharpened on the stone of the market, as we say. So you then go, okay, if we're going to get this baby off the ground in an online sense, then it's all about building community. What do you mean by community?
Well, when we were a print magazine, we used to do really fun things like we once invited all our subscribers to send photos of themselves. And then we created a giant montage of their faces and wrote the words funky, sexy, cool on the front cover, so that everyone had participated. We also would do things like we'd invite our readers to take their print magazines and leave it in boardrooms, waiting rooms, or best of all, in the back seat of the plane You know, when you get the magazine on the back of the line. I've met people to this day that still think that we had a deal going with Virgin.
Great.
Because they'd always get on the plane and they'd find the magazine. So what we did is, rather than be necessarily a trumpet, just basically a one-way form of communication, even in our print days, we were constantly finding ways to invite the readers to dictate how we were going to be doing what we do and how we run our business. So everything becomes a conversation. So a business that's run by the customers is always going to have that community vibe, because suddenly it's not just a small number of people calling all the shots. It's actually the tribe. It's actually the village.
When you say
everybody coming together.
This is resonating so much with me and some of my recent guests, including Cameron from Black Milk Clothing, who has a massive tribe. I get this, and I hope my listeners are getting it too, because what it's all about belonging, isn't it? It's all about this human need to belong to something, the tribal thing.
Well, we call our readers Anthillians, and now we've got a group buying site called Ant Mart, and the customers of that are called Ant Martians. And people,
Love it.
as I said, in the print magazine days, people would walk around with a copy of the magazine, and people would come up to them in coffee shops and say, "Oh, do you read Anthill? Do you?" I used to call it niche mainstream, because people who read it thought that they were niche, but it was actually the numbers told a different story. It was actually relatively mainstream.
Secret handshakes?
Yeah, secret handshakes. That's right. A wink and a nod.
What? So many questions. I was going to say, how does a small business then, and we're talking florist, accountant, the whole spectrum. This should apply to every business, this concept of community. And I've seen it, by the way, with small business, big marketing. You know, people say, how have I done it with small business, big marketing? 3 years ago, first episode, no audience. Of course, you go out there, there's no one out there. But you build the content, you engage with people, and obviously social media has allowed us to do that, because it's a two-way street now in communicating, but giving people the opportunity to be part of what it is you're building is so powerful, sometimes not easy. So maybe, James, explain, how does a small business go about building a community?
Well, I just thought of one example, and it's a mate of mine who owns a burger joint. So, this is an old school business. They sell burgers. Well, one clever thing that he did is he actually just stuck a laptop, which has now been replaced with an iPad, on his bench. So that's a $500 investment. And a little thing that said, like us on Facebook, and be part of our community, and also get discounts and offers. And one of the twofold. One, we're looking about a commercial reason. On a Tuesday night, things are quiet. So every Tuesday night at 6:50 or something, he puts something on the Facebook wall which says, "Come in for a burger and get a free set of fries. Share this coupon." That's brilliant from a commercial perspective.
Simple.
Tuesday night, suddenly a busy night. And everyone on Facebook lives near each other. By and large, they live near the majority of their friends on Facebook.
Yep.
So they all see it. And then, before you know it, there's people standing next to each other in his burger shop going, "Oh, yeah, I saw the thing on Facebook." That's one element of community. The other thing is just the rest of the time he's often asking questions like, "Do you think that we should replace tomato sauce with barbecue sauce?" Simple things.
That's
it doesn't
a big
seem like
question
rocket
too,
science.
by the way. So Matt, there's a show in that.
Yeah, that's right. Beetroot or no beetroot.
Correct. Okay, yeah, keep going.
Oh, well, those sorts of things. So even the type of the business, the other element is that, all you need to do is look at your audience and think about what their passions and their headaches are. So, for example, that example of barbecue sauce or tomato sauce, that is both a headache and a passion, because if you don't like barbecue sauce and you get your burger with it, you're upset. But it's also a passion, because some people will live and die on the basis that they want the barbecue sauce. So no matter your business, you always look at your customers. It could be a B2B business, could be a large enterprise, could be a florist. Well, what makes them passionate, and also what are their headaches? Mm-hmm. They're real human things. And then when humans start to engage, suddenly you find yourself with a community.
And what you're doing is really providing opportunities for conversation amongst your customers.
Yeah, opportunity for conversation. I mentioned the 4 principles before.
No, you haven't.
I mentioned that there were four principles. I didn't say what they were.
You teased us. So what are they? I love a process. I love a 4-step process.
Yeah, someone gave me the word pillars the other day. So now there are 4 pillars if I feel like it.
Whatever floats your boat.
And whatever floats your boat. Measurable, findable, shareable, manageable. So I would urge the listeners to remember those 4 words when they're doing anything online. Make it measurable, findable, shareable, manageable. And if I'm going to slam through that quickly, measurable. Don't do anything online that can't be measured. And the funny thing is, we're talking about all sorts of businesses. What would be, online people, if you sell something online, that's an easy metric. Someone goes on and they buy something. But if you're a consultant, maybe your measurable goal should be highly qualified leads. But if you're the burger guy or the florist, maybe the measurement can be, the metric can be vouchers brought into the shop. Don't do anything that can't be measurable, because then if you can measure it, you can work out if I spend $1,000, I'm going to get, I've figured out already that I'm getting $2,000 back. Findable. It used to be get found in the yellow pages. It still is, but it's also findable in an online format is often search engine optimization. So it's a simplified way of saying SEO, findable. The third one, shareable. We mentioned Facebook a second ago. And everyone gets really excited about social media, and they should. But a lot of the stuff that social media does, there's been other tools that have been able to do it just as well.
Like what?
The one thing that for example, people might talk about feedback. Okay. We know free customer reviews. Now that's obviously done online, and it was done online before there was social media, and it was done when we were a print magazine. We used to know that if someone actually called our feedback line, they would become almost a subscriber for life. It was amazing. But the one thing that social media does better than anything else is it empowers your market to do your marketing for you. This is why I use the word shareable instead of social media when it comes to building communities. So my mate with the burger shop pretty much urged his fans to share the voucher, which is an unusual thing because most businesses are based on the idea of not sharing. And I think that you had someone on the other week who was talking about content marketing. That's another thing. You create something that people can share. Content marketing is even better because you create it, you get people to your website, which is measurable. It search engine optimizes your site, which makes you more findable. People can share it, which makes it more shareable.
Well, I think that's it. And I know there'll be listeners sitting there now. And you and I had a conversation the other day where I'd been to an event, and I gave a bit of a rant on last week's episode about this social media speaker who got up in front of 600 of us and just rattled off the big numbers. And I'm really sensitive to a social media discussion these days. It's still on people's, when I get asked to do keynote speaking around marketing, there's always a social media element, and it's, they always want a social media element. There's still a lot of small business owners out there, James, who they update their Facebook, they put a tweet out there, they update their LinkedIn profile, and it's tumbleweeds. It's a ghost town.
Oh yeah, it must be able to translate back to one of those measurable goals. Whether it's sales online, whether it's leads, whether it's email addresses, whether it's coupon downloads.
Yep.
If it's not doing any of those things, sure, you could have 500,000 Facebook fans.
Yeah.
But it's meaningless. It's funny, if I walked into your office, Tim, and I said, you need a new server, you would say, why? Is it going to make me money or is it going to save me money? But if I walked in and said you need to be on Twitter, well, you're a smart dude, so you'd probably also say why. But a lot of other people just go, oh yeah, we need to be on Twitter. Not is it going to make us money or is it going to save us money? It's got to do one of those two things. Otherwise, why are you doing it? You're just wasting everybody's time, especially your own.
So your social media activity, and I won't get you to go into detail here, but maybe there's an opportunity later. Your social media activity has positive ROI and positive financial ROI.
That's right.
That's cool.
The fourth pillar is actually manageable, measurable, findable, shareable, manageable. So once you've worked out all that sort of stuff, you need to be able to set it out so it can run while you sleep. So some of the things that I'm particularly proud of is that when I talk about Twitter, I actually talk about Twitter as a traffic funnel, because it brings traffic to our site, which we can convert into email addresses, and then we can convert into revenue. When I talk about Facebook, I talk about a Facebook prospect base. Once again, same sort of like goals. But all of them have to be tied back. So we went from a period where we had 1,800 Facebook fans, and over a 3-month period, we went to 4,500 Facebook fans. Like, if you look at our little statistics, it was explosive, and it was good because we learned how to, dominate on Facebook relatively cheaply and manageably, in our sleep. But the thing was, at the end of those 3 months, we couldn't see a tangible increase in revenue as a result of that effort. So now, 6 months later, we're probably at about 5,500. We went up 3,500 over 3 months. Then over the next 6 months, we probably only went up another 1,000.
And revenue?
There wasn't that much revenue in it for us. So there was no point putting in the effort. Whereas something like Twitter, we can see a direct correlation between followers and revenue. And I also know people that use LinkedIn exceptionally well, and they know that the amount of effort they put in, the amount of effort that they get out. But back to my mate with the burger shop, he would know, based on how many hours that he puts in servicing his Facebook account, how many burgers he sells as a result, because he can see a direct correlation between fans, voucher downloads, and new business and voucher redemptions in his shop.
Yep. Gotcha. So tell me, James, just going back full circle to, this is all about building community. There's a whole lot of social media discussion in that. Is it all about social media, or is there, because clearly community can have, I know businesses that put on networking events or information evenings, face-to-face stuff. Wacky, I know. But,
that's why I said that the social media does a bunch of things that people have been doing extremely well for a long time anyway.
Yep.
So, for example, in some people's situations, when you're talking about community, the live event far trumps the online event.
Yep.
But I like the combo, perhaps using social media to get people to attend a live event.
Absolutely.
And then get people at that live event to register their attendance on LinkedIn to get more people to attend that live event. But that's a completely different strategy for another day.
Absolutely. I know you've got you've got a live event, because Anthill, interestingly enough, in terms of revenue streams, whilst it's Anthill Online is the brand, your revenue streams are varied. You have online advertising, you run webinars, you've got live events. I went to an event you put on a couple of weeks ago at an innovation centre in Melbourne, and it was fantastic. And so you've carved it up into a whole lot of different streams. Which of those community building initiatives provide you the best return, both financially and in terms of the community feeling as though they're belonging?
Well, we wrote a document about 2 years ago called "What Does Anthill Look Like Without Advertising?" because we didn't want to be dependent on advertising.
And at the time you were?
Oh, yes, heavily so.
Yeah.
And we still are heavily involved, reliant on advertising. It is probably more than 50% of our revenue still. And I don't imagine that changing much. But when you have a community, when you own the eyeballs, which is what I urge any small or big business owner to do, own the eyeballs, whether that's a Facebook fan base or a Twitter followers or an email newsletter or a blog, own the eyeballs. If you own the eyeballs, then you can start selling them things. So we moved on to creating a group buying site, which has been moderately successful. But in terms of community, we started to run webinars, live events. We ran an event, Conquer the Web, on the 22nd of June, ended up filling up the State Library Theatre in Melbourne.
Wow.
It was huge.
What a great venue.
Absolutely. It was just such a good vibe. It rocked.
Yeah.
Was one of the feedback on one of the feedback forms. And we've got that event coming up in September in Brisbane and Sydney.
Cool.
I don't know if I'm allowed to give a gratuitous plug.
James, it's all about community, and as long as it helps build my listeners' marketing prowess, then you can promote anything you like.
I'll give the softest sell ever. The softest sell ever.
Conquer the Web, Sydney, Brisbane. So what is it? You present the 4 pillars, or is it something?
That's it. That's exactly it. That's the soft sell. Full day event, 9 in the morning to 4 in the afternoon.
Cool.
Me and a couple other speakers, and we're going to run through those 4 pillars and make it really fun and really lively and really interactive.
Nice.
And I'll come up with a cheap discount code for your for your
Stop
listeners.
it. You're spoiling us now. Oh, that's great, mate. I'll talk to you offline about that. In fact, I'll talk about it once this finishes, and if you give me the link. Well, people can go to smallbusinessbigmarketing.com, episode 100, and find the link to that. That's very cool. Thanks, mate.
Wow, we're the Centurions.
What's that? Yeah, we are the Centurions. Roman soldiers. Brilliant, mate. James, what do you love? What do you love about doing what you do?
I used the word experimental before. I love experimenting. I love split testing. I love seeing what's going to work.
You're a geek, aren't you?
I am a geek.
Yep.
I'm a closet. I'm actually a closet Luddite in the sense that I don't. I didn't come to technology naturally as the former print guy. I resisted, but now that I'm here, so that this is good for anyone out there that doesn't really get into technology. There is hope, because suddenly when you start to view it almost like a computer game where you make small incremental changes and you get big outcomes.
Oh, you are geeking out, mate. The quote of the show, I love split testing. Wow. Hey, there it is. Euro magic.
That's right. A/B testing. Love A/B testing.
Hey, who's the most famous person you've ever met?
I met Bill Gates and James Dyson of the vacuum cleaner in the same day.
Wow. Same event?
Different events. It was just a coincidental thing where I interviewed Bill Gates, which was the reason why I went to Sydney.
Hang on. Yeah, I interviewed Bill Gates. Listeners, you know my favourite quote, which is Mick Jagger once told me never drop names. How did you – my gosh, we're running out of time. You can't do this to me. How did you get to interview Bill Gates?
Well, the one great thing about having the Anthill brand was that there's a magazine in the US called Fast Company.
Yeah, great magazine.
Great magazine, edgy and experimental. So all these big names had come to Australia and they'd say, what's the equivalent of Fast Company magazine? Because they didn't want to be in the Forbes equivalent.
Yep.
And my name would come up. So the one day I got to meet Bill, and then that afternoon went to a penthouse apartment, got to hang out with James Dyson, which I've got to say was one of the James Dyson hour or so that I spent with him was one of the most inspiring in my life. It was great.
Why?
Well, firstly, he spent 11 years building his Dyson vacuum cleaner, and he embodies the epitome of entrepreneurship in my view. Probably a good point to end on. He was driven not by the process of wealth creation. He was driven by the process of creation itself. And I think that business builders, when they take that attitude, it becomes so much easier to get through the hard times. I'm sure Steve Jobs lived that epitome, lived that I can't think of the expression now.
Yeah, no,
that's
I know
that
exactly
sentiment.
What you mean.
But he was the living embodiment of entrepreneurship is not driven by wealth creation. It is driven by the passion of creation.
So he's spent 11 years. He's 11 years. Year one, he's identified a problem with vacuum cleaners. He spends the next 11 designing one that's not only functionally brilliant but looks amazing. 11 years, and now the rest is history.
And the rest is history. Having every major brand in the world tell him that it was ridiculous or it was not going to fly,
Did he see himself as? I think I know the answer to this. As a vacuum cleaner guy or as a designer? He's a high-end designer, isn't he?
He's a high-end designer, and it's the vacuum cleaner is not his only claim to fame. He's done some other pretty
He's done that
interesting
fan,
things
that
as well
crazy
too.
fan without the blades.
Yeah, he also invented the ball barrow, but he couldn't get a patent on it.
The ball barrow,
which is a wheelbarrow with a ball instead of a clunky little wheel.
How funny. James,
interesting guy.
That is a good one. It was a good spot to finish, but I do love I just wanted a bit more about Bill Gates. So where did you interview him? And talk to me about, you've walked into a room somewhere and there's Bill sitting there waiting for you to ask the first question. Tell us about what happened.
Yeah, it was a pretty different interview to the James Dyson one. He's sitting there on a very high stool, and I'm given a very low chair. and that's right. And I sat there with my notepad, and I hate to say, he didn't want to be there, and he was probably aware that I wasn't going to ask any interesting questions, because any question that I asked, he had a pretty pre-rehearsed answer for.
Were you told what questions to ask, or what questions you couldn't ask?
No, but they didn't give me much prep time.
Right.
And there's really only so much you can ask, and it was very clear that they just wanted to talk about the launch of a new product. So he didn't want to be there, and pretty quickly I didn't want to be there either. So it was a good juxtaposition for James Dyson later on in the day, who definitely wanted to be there, and I have to say was as interested in my business as I was in his. Whether it was sincere or not, I don't care. Well, I don't care because it was just a wonderful experience and I loved it. Yeah,
brilliant. Hey, James Tuckerman, you're an interesting guy yourself. Thanks so much for being on Small Business Big Marketing, shared some marketing gems, and I really appreciate it. I'll put a link to Conquer the Web in the show notes, guys. And James, it's been a pleasure.
It's been tons of fun. Thanks, Tim.
Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed that interview as much as I enjoyed bringing it to you. James is a great guy. He's got lots of good quality content to share. He walks the talk. That's what I love about my guests. Every single one of them actually walks the talk of what they share. James has built that multi-million-dollar Anthill brand on the back of all that kind of stuff he shared around content and that 4-step process. Go to conquertheweb.com.au. If you're in Brisbane, it's on the 21st of September. In Sydney, on the 28th of September. If you enter the promotional code, SBBM, the acronym for Small Business Big Marketing, you'll get like a 50% discount. So head along to that. I encourage you to do so. Now, I remember last episode I said that I would have a guy by the name of Eugene on, who was a surf photographer at Bondi Beach. Clearly, I lied. But he's on next week. I had done the interview, but I wanted to bring James's interview forward. Eugene, fascinating story next week, guys. He has the third most visited tourist attraction in Sydney behind the Harbour Bridge and the Sydney Opera House. He is the third most visited tourist attraction, according to the Lonely Planet Guide. That is a big achievement, and it's a retail outlet, and he is crushing it with his marketing. He's got a great story to tell. That is next week on show 101. Until then, may your marketing shine. May you continue to absolutely crush it. And if you're not, try something different and turn off something that's not working. Until next time, thanks, guys. Love your work. Bye.
You've been listening to the Small Business Big Marketing Show with Tim Reid. Want more marketing goodness? Then visit smallbusinessbigmarketing.com.